Shalom Aleichem, and welcome to Shark Tank. My name is Yaakov Wolf. Shark Tank is a weekly podcast for Bnei Torah in the workforce, featuring mentors, role models, and experts. You can also join our quiet WhatsApp group for exclusive bonus content. The link is in the show notes. This week, we sit down with Rav Chezkie Glatt, who I have known since he was still Chezkie. Rav Chezkie is an involved father, teaches 3 Siddharim a day in Yeshivat Torat Shraga, and is the founder and CTO of Roga Analyitics, a data company which now has 12 employees. How does he do that? That's what you'll hear about in this conversation. We touched on a whole bunch of really important topics, and there's still a lot more to unpack. This is Shark Tank. It's time to dive in. Chezkie Glatt, welcome to our show, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Yaakov. I'm really excited.
So we live in a fascinating time. Technology has really changed our capabilities as far as where we work, how we work, when we work, why we work. The pandemic also exacerbated that process and really forced us to rethink. But well before any of this, you grew up in a home where your father had a very interesting blend of both a career in Kodesh and a career in Chol. So could you introduce to our listeners what your father does professionally?
Sure. My father, Rabbi Dr. Aaron Glatt, is both a rabbi and a doctor. He's a rabbi, an associate rabbi at a very large shul out in Long Island in New York in the young Israel of Whitmere. And aside from that, he's also the chair of medicine at a hospital, part of the Mount Sinai network of hospitals called South Nassau, also out in Long Island. And he's both a rabbi and a doctor, but interestingly enough, in his case, he was really the doctor first. My father was a young medical student, not particularly involved in learning, very academically focused, had done very well at school, but his parents were Holocaust survivors both, and he was never deeply introduced to the world of Torah learning. It was only once somebody convinced him to start attending the Daf Yomi that he began to get into learning, to really care about his Torah study. And the first cycle around, he just attended, he got up early in the morning, demonstrated dedication, but without having the real skills to participate more actively. But he wanted to. And with the next cycle, he began to learn it inside. He began to even volunteer to give it. And now, decades later, my father is a prolific writer, author, a teacher of Torah, somebody who has thousands of recordings online. He's somebody who is a remarkable disseminator of Torah simply because he decided to become that rabbi throughout the years of my youth and then has done so much with it in the years since. So he's both a rabbi and a doctor. Busy man, definitely a busy man.
And at what point did he get smicha?
When I was very little, he began to travel into Brooklyn from our home in Whitmere. It's fascinating. There was no such thing as some sort of online or remote smicha program like you might find nowadays with YU Torah and the like. Instead, he went to a grandson, the Yeshivat Levi, Rav Buzzner's kollel, smicha kollel in Brooklyn. And he learned Yordea seriously at Ohr HaChaim, and he took tests, and he did that for a couple of years, going out late at night after a busy day after, and spending time with us children. He would go out at night to learn, and he earned smicha. His first rabbinic role was when I was still in grade school. He became the assistant rabbi at the shul I grew up in, called Anshe Chesed in South Shore. When the rabbi became ill, he essentially covered for him for a number of years. And then after that, when I was, I think, in 8th or 9th grade, he became an assistant rabbi at the Young Israel of Whitmere. He'd always been giving the Daf Yomi there and other shiurim in Mariv, but at that point, he became an official rabbi, part of the staff, and took on a formal communal rabbinic role.
So as you're growing up, he was studying medicine and then practicing medicine, studying to become a rabbi, then becoming a rabbi. Sounds like a really, really busy guy. So what was it like for you being the son of such a busy man?
It's a great question, Yaakov. Amazingly, I never felt that my father was too busy for us or too busy for anything that he wanted to do. Somehow, he managed to do everything. He was there, present for us on a nightly basis. He would play games with us. He would read to us. He would learn Torah with me. In fact, by my mitzvah, we made numerous siyumim just because my father and I learned together every single night as if he had all the time in the world. My father was a master of compartmentalizing every different element of his life, keeping it in its respective box. So I always felt like my father was present. I have very fond memories of us shooting around our driveway with basketball, having catches, playing video games, even watching movies. I'm allowed to say that we spent so much quality time together that to this very day, I have a tremendously close connection with my father.
So that's really inspiring to hear how he, number one, became a rabbi later in life. And even though didn't go through the normal track of becoming a rabbi at a young age, he was able to really push himself to do that later. That's number one. Number two, how he was able to be both a rabbi and a professional and a very present father. So that's really, really special to hear. Now, it's not hard to see the connection between what he did when you were a kid and what you're doing now. You're also a rabbi, you're also a professional, and you're also a family man. So I want to hear from you how you view that connection between the example he set and what you're doing right now today.
What I'm trying to do, I would say, nowadays, and that's really because it was both, to answer your question, a blessing and a curse. You see, my father did what he did so successfully, with such finesse and with such apparent ease, that he made it seem like the rest of us can do so just as flawlessly, with just an effortless attempt at wanting to succeed in all of these areas. And what I've learned is that though it was a blessing to have such a paradigm of balance in my life, somebody who I could watch in action, very up close and personal, succeed in bifurcating these different areas of his life and putting each thing into its own respective bucket, where he would give it 100% when he was at work, give it 100% when he's teaching the daf, 100% when he's sitting there at our dinner table just talking to us and spending time with us, and not allowing those to spill into the other. The curse, flip side of it, was that it's a real struggle. And as I'm sure you and many of our listeners will be aware of, it's not nearly as easy as my father makes it look. It's very, very hard to have that mental fortitude to focus on the thing that needs to be focused on in its given time, rather than letting everything just spill into the nest, and then you become a big mess. I want to be clear that I don't mean to go up against the celebrated letter of Rav Hutner, where he speaks of a student of his who felt that he was leading a double life, being a Jew at home, out in the workplace, being somebody altogether different. Rav Hutner explained what a mistake that is to view one's life, work-life balance, as being split in that sense. That no, it's a broad existence, not a dull life that you're leading. You're having your Avodas HaKodesh spill into so many different realms in this world. And that, of course, is true, and something we should all appreciate, that when we're at the office, that we're doing something important, and as part of our Avodas Hashem, we need to become Kiddush Hashem, we need to act with honesty and integrity, and so much that can directly correlate with our main goal in life, which is to serve the Rebbe Shalom. But what I mean to say is that as much as it's true that that's all part of one big picture, you do need to have separated elements where you can say that this is the time to do this, and not to be on your phone, for example, dealing with work emails while you're supposed to be sitting there with your child, helping them with their home. That's not the way. And on the flip side, you shouldn't be learning while you're supposed to be doing work, because right now is not the time to be learning. Right now, you have an obligation for your employer to do the best job you can. You need to be able to build in time for everything. My father definitely taught me that. He had a set schedule he really tried his best to stick to, and succeeded, therefore, at being 100% present for each of the tasks he was doing, without, again, leading a double life. It was a broad life, but a clearly distinguished, compartmentalized, successful.
It almost sounds like the difference between drawing a beautiful painting with lots of very beautiful colors versus taking those beautiful colors, mixing them all together into one really bland color, and then throwing it on the canvas. Those are two very, very different pictures. That seems to be what you're describing. You learned in Karen Biavne, where I'm sitting right now. Then you went to YU. So what did you major in and why?
So after I finished my 2 years in KBY, I went to YU with a large chevra. We all felt that would be the next step for us to grow in our learning, as well as in our career development. And indeed, that was the case in my regard. I tried very hard for a number of semesters to find the right major for me. At first, I was going to be an English major. My mother wasn't having it. She wasn't interested in me doing something without a clear trajectory that she saw as practical, and therefore, I turned to the business. I tried accounting, I tried finance, areas where I felt that I would gain more hard skills, and that would help my career going forward. But I found them both to be, let's just say, rather uninteresting. And though I did well, I wasn't interested in spending years and years of my life in those fields. And therefore, I was very happy when a new major opened up during my time in YU, which was called BIMA at the time, Business Intelligence and Marketing Analytics. In essence, data analytics major, where I would be provided with some hard skills to enter the workforce with a little bit of a background in coding and other tools that I would be able to use in a wide variety of jobs. But it was also important to me because, number one, I enjoyed it. I found that problem solving involved fascinating. It tapped into the creativity, which I believed I had within me. And I really enjoyed the actual work. I saw a lot of potential on a career level as the world became more and more excited about big data. That's only grown with the development of data science and the publicity that so much the world of data science has gotten over recent years. But I think also importantly, I don't want to say most importantly, because it's hard to really measure these things, but to me, it felt most important at the time, was that it enabled me to learn. This was a major where I could pick up a hard skill, but still spend a tremendous amount of time, the base medrash, developing as Ben Torah, because it didn't require much work outside of class. And Baruch Hashem, I think I was successful in getting good grades and getting a good degree in a good major from YU, while also learning.
So I would just want to summarize what you said and sort of divide it up into 3 points, though you may have presented a little more as 2. Point number 1 is that you wanted to be effective as a professional and something that you enjoy and you were good at. Number 2, which you sort of mentioned in passing, was that you were forward-looking. You were entering into a field that was going to have great potential in the future, that was up and coming in big data. And number 3 is that you wanted to keep your learning at a primary point in your life. So how did those 3 things, being an effective professional, being forward-thinking, and focusing on your learning, how did that affect you in the next stage after graduation?
It was complicated. As I finished my time in YU proper, I was trying to decide the next steps. And for me, it seemed a no-brainer. I wanted to continue in my learning. As I mentioned, to me, that was what felt most important at the time. And as much as I wanted to do my hishtadlus and make sure that I would be set up for success in the world of working more broadly, I also wanted to try my hand at chinuch. I wanted to try my hand at rabbanas. And smicha, therefore, seemed the right option for me. I got married at the time, and my wife agreed. We began living in the Heights as I spent 2 years doing smicha in YU in Washington Heights. And I did a rabbinic internship at the time at West Hempstead, which was a remarkable experience for me. It was something where I really got to learn about giving shiurim and talking to people and being involved in a community. It was a great chance to see a master rabbi up close and personal in his role, and I gained tremendously. And I wanted to continue my smicha, and specifically I wanted to continue my smicha in Eretz Yisrael. We went to Grus, YU's Israel Kollel, for the remainder of my smicha, the last 2 years. And I continued to learn seriously and receive smicha here in Eretz Yisrael. It was also important for us to be in Eretz Yisrael. My wife said we were going for a year. I said we were going for our first year. Baruch Hashem, it's now our 8th year. We've been Aliyah. This is where we intend to be and stay. It's what we always wanted, or at least what I always wanted. And my wife was very happy to be a part of that vision as we continue to stay here. And what happened was that as I was finishing smicha, that same gnawing question of, okay, so what are you going to do, kept on coming more and more to the forefront. It wasn't simply a matter of let's say, a desire to learn, as much as it was a desire to teach and to find a role in which I felt I could make an impact and to give back to the community. I had other friends, for example, who continued to learn more full-time when I, as you'll hear in a moment, already began to teach at that stage in my development. And that was because I had this real desire to try being involved, something I always kind of enjoyed. I was always involved with younger guys when I was in yeshiva and going back even to my high school years. And I was excited to try my hand at chinuch, but I also had to think practically. All along, as I was going down this, let's call it Ben Torah development, hoping to become a rabbi, hoping to become a teacher of Torah, I was also trying to make sure that I was, as I said before, doing my hishtadlus to enable the potential career, which was quite likely I would turn to. And in order to keep myself well-versed in the world of data analytics, I had done a number of things. I was doing internships throughout, so that way there would be huge gaps on my resume upon graduation. But in fact, 1 year when we were ready in Eretz Yisrael, I flew back and I spent the summer working in a large global hedge fund in a data analytics role, which I learned a ton at, and it was really excellent for me. I learned different tools in data science as well, additional programming skills. And it was an awesome experience and a great thing for me to have on my resume. But even aside from that, more in the certification area, I also pursued an MBA in artificial intelligence to, again, keep my resume busy when I would be considered for jobs as a potential prospect. And I also took an additional course, a boot camp with a program here in Israel called ITC, where I gained additional certification as a data analyst to keep my skills fresh and to be familiar. So as I was doing those two things, really trying to decide which career path I would go down, I, in short, tried to hedge my bets and keep both options open. When it came down to my final year in smicha, that was when I really had to make a decision. At that point, what was I going to do the next year? I wasn't going to just stay at learning. I would also either be teaching or I would also be working, and I wanted to figure out what would be best. I decided I would hold off. I don't think there's value in incessantly worrying about these problems. So I said I'm holding off until right after Hanukkah, when January comes around. First half of the year, I'm not thinking about it. Second half of the year, as I near the end of my smicha, I would reach out to all my contacts, Israel and America, in both areas, and see what the best option would be. And Baruch Hashem, almost immediately, the opportunity to teach at Torat Shraga opened up. It was one which I seized because it was exactly what I was looking for. Financially provided me for the needs I had at the time, just having my second child. And in terms of, more importantly, the substance of what I'd be doing, this was exactly what I was looking for. I'd be working with the type of guys, the right age, the more dedicated and stronger students in their second year program in a way where I felt my own learning was progressing and I was able to teach on a high level. It was something I was very excited about. I felt was a no-brainer. I had to take it. My Rebbi man told me about how in order to succeed in chinuch in America, you need a siyata d'shmaya. You need divine assistance. But in Eretz Yisrael, in order to get into this specific niche gap year program world, you need siyata d'shmaya, unique degree of divine assistance. And I felt that I had that. I felt that here was an opportunity which checked all the boxes, would make me happy and make an impact and provide for my family. So I went for it.
So you're really able to find that siyata d'shmaya gedola to open up your career in a job which you really loved and was really good for you and covered your financial needs. Was there a point where financially the numbers stopped adding up? And what did you do then?
Yes, there was such a point. As I had my next child, my expenses were really making it very, very tight. Baruch Hashem, I had been self-sufficient because of the kollel stipend, because of the work that my wife was doing during my years in smicha. And at that point, it wasn't cutting it. I didn't have a smicha stipend. I had income from my main job at Torat Shraga, but it wasn't enough at that point for me to continue providing for my family the way I wanted to. And I began to start various side gigs. First, in the world of, broadly speaking, Jewish education still, where I worked for different companies as a writer, as an editor. I worked for a period of time for ArtScroll, for example, and one particular foundation hired a friend of mine and me to work together on a project, research and consider. We spent 8 months on that. It's a fantastic experience as well. And I did those things to find time that was neither day nor night to borrow the market. However, it was when I had my fourth child, Kanai Hara, and when we decided to settle down in Yerushalayim, where I currently live in Beit Mordechai, and settling down meant buying an apartment. It was a great location. We loved the community. We had already spent time there 2 years, and it's right near Torat Shraga and Michlala, where my wife teaches. And we wanted to really set down roots, but to do so requires a huge mortgage. And that huge mortgage would be something which its monthly payments would demand I have even a higher income than just my regular Rebbi salary, as well as my editing, writing gigs on the side. So I turned back to the world of data analytics. It was at that point that I was finishing up my MBA, and I got that additional level of certification through ITC. And I started to look for jobs. Now, I'm a big proponent of networking. I think that you definitely have to reach out to people. I think that's how most people get their jobs. In fact, it's how I've hired most of the people on my team currently. But in my case, it was one of those examples of just siyata d'shmaya. I saw a posting on a Nefesh job board, I applied. They saw my resume. They liked what I had to offer. I came in. We had a good interview. And before you know it, I was working for Roga Partners, an outsourcing company where I began this next stage of my career, which has steadily snowballed into me being a co-founder and CTO of a spin-off company, high-tech company called Roga Analyitics.
Okay. So you started out with internships, you transitioned to side hustles, then to a real job, and then to a more executive role. So throughout that journey, what was happening to your teaching career?
I always viewed my teaching career as my real career. In fact, this might sound strange to you, I still do. In fact, this year, I am teaching 3 Siddharim at Torat Shraga, not just the afternoons and nights as I've been doing for the past number of years, but even in the mornings as well, in lieu of the learning that I had been doing. My learning definitely took a hit. My teaching, I hope, didn't take a hit because I had essentially this slot of time that was there in the mornings, which I was able to substitute now for this, as you called it, more real job. As I began to work in the regular workforce, I had my mornings open, and I still did try to do my own learning. I have time before my job and at nights, on weekends, I would try to squeeze in my own extra learning, but it absolutely took a hit. I want to be clear, it also took a hit, not simply because of the obvious exchange of hours for hours, but also once you are in that world, once you are working, maybe not full-time, in my case, it was 4 hours, at 6 hours as I progressed, it was something which just took over more of my own emotional capital, my own energy. It demanded of me, and therefore found it difficult in order to really substantiate my learning in the same way, even in the moments which I had slotted for learning. I was tired. I was out of it. It was hard to really see the same growth trajectory. One bit of advice that I had been given, which really stuck with me and enabled me to hold on to my learning, was to never, ever give up. And I consistently insisted that though this is growing pains that hurt, that really make me feel like I'm not able to learn in the same way I was able, not a number of hours, not even in quality, I still believed and insisted on holding myself to a very high standard in my learning that I would expect myself to really accomplish, to really grow. And I think that got me through that beginning, which was so difficult. Because I'll teach us, all beginnings are hard. And one always has to have this careful finger on the pulse as to assess, is it that this is too hard? And is this a situation of tafasta or below tafasta? Or this is the normal hard? And this is just something which is difficult. And you just have to get through that beginning. In my own case, though it was a struggle, I learned a great deal of strategies and good tactics to make sure to stick to my learning time, to push myself in my learning. And I think I rode that wave, but now I'm in a different place.
So your personal learning is not what it used to, according to what you're saying, but you, at the same time, are still teaching 3 Siddharim in yeshiva, and you're an executive of a company. So I'd love for you to take us through your daily schedule and how you make that work.
It's complicated. It's definitely complicated. I would note 2 points about schedule, 2 big asterisks to make on the comments I'm about to say. That number 1 is that I view schedule as a dynamic process that has to be reassessed in an ongoing basis. You can't just say, this is my schedule for the next 20 years. Every Zman, every period in my own life, I am reassessing, am I using my time right? How do things go based off of the expected versus the actual budgeted amount of time? What worked? What did it? And I'm always assessing that again and again based off of different changing circumstances, what my kids need, what my family needs, what my students need, what my work needs. Aside from that asterisk, though, there's another asterisk, which is even once you have a schedule, a set schedule, something which you're trying to follow, given this work-life balance you're trying to achieve during a specific Zman, I still think that there has to be flexibility. You can't beat yourself up when kid was throwing up late at night and you have to go to Lear Shabbos the next morning and like the schedule gets out. You can't get all confused by moments like that. A lot of people do. I think it's unhealthy. You have to realize that you're trying your best, but life is not so rigid that it can be neatly laid out on an Excel spreadsheet as what you'll do exactly every 15 minutes every day. You can try for that, but you won't really succeed, and you have to know you won't succeed at that. And that gives you a lot of mental health as you go about your day. So with those two asterisks, recognize that you have to reassess the schedule and be flexible even once you've assessed what would be right for you. My daily schedule is essentially I have time to learn before I daven, and then I daven. I drive my kids to school every day. It's a priority for me to send my kids to the schools, which I do. And I'm the bus driver. I take them and their friends every day. Spends about 45 minutes to an hour in the morning and in the afternoon every day commuting. But I don't view that as lost time. I try to, in the time when my kids are in the car, I want to just going to get them. So I speak to them. I tell them stories. We joke together. Sometimes we play music. It's a good time. It's bonding time with me and my children. And in the other direction, when I'm leaving their school or on my way to go pick them up, so then I listen to Shira, not just whatever speech or why you tell her. I try to have set Shira that I follow, so I really feel like it's growth time. It's not comparable to being in the base medrash, that's for sure. It's not the same, but it's something, and it can supplement. And then afterwards, I head into yeshiva. I normally have time after I've dropped off my kids to school before morning seder begins, where I can prepare and do other teaching projects, such as various daily WhatsApps I send out. And then after that, I have my formal morning seder gig, where I seder and shir with the boys, Shana Aleph. And then afterwards, I know mincha and straight off to work. Sometimes I go into the office just a few minutes away. Sometimes I work from very classroom I'm sitting in right now in Yeshivat Torat Shraga. And I have about 2 hours slotted for that at that point in time, where all over the place, speaking to all the different members of my team, helping try to guide their efforts. Sometimes I have to do that also a little bit in the morning, just through a few texts before I get into yeshiva, during that preparation time I mentioned beforehand, but where I basically know where everybody is, all the moving parts, everyone's doing the right thing. And after those 2 hours, I turn back to go pick up my children from school, switch with my wife, tag team. It's her turn now, and I go back to yeshiva, and I teach afternoon seder. I'm normally home by around 6:15 after I end Shia late, and then walk back. And I am home really every single night for 2 hours, where I spend time with my kids. I play games with them. I read to them. I bathe them. I feed them dinner. I put them to sleep. And I'm a very involved father on that level. It's my highest priority. If I had to pick one, is being a good father. And I really do try my best to do that to them. And then normally we're at about 8 to 9 p.m. at this point. I have a lot of Eastern hour meetings with our clients. Almost every night that slot is filled. It's hard to find more time. I try not to let it eat into before my kids are asleep by normally around 8 o'clock. And from 8 to 9, I'm doing more work. And then I'm out in yeshiva again from 9 to 11, 3 nights a week. Then afterwards, I come back. I try to be asleep by 12. Just so it's clear, I believe very much that you have to have sleep built into your schedule. I'm not one of those people who doesn't sleep at all. I take care of myself, or at least I try to. And I try to be asleep by 12 o'clock each night. I'm up by 6, latest. And between that amount of time, I've got 6 hours of sleep, quarter of my day. I think that's enough, sufficient for me at this stage of my life. And the other nights that I'll just make note of, if you're wondering what my kids and the work and the teaching, I try to have dedicated time where my wife and I also spend time, aside from when we're working together as a team, bringing our kids to sleep and everything like that, but also where we just get time to spend together. The weekends are obviously huge, Fridays and Shabbos. I'm sure that's true for anybody in the professional world. But aside for those days, but on Tuesday mornings, for example, I have 2 hours cut into my learning time and cut into my teaching and working time, where I have an opportunity just to spend time with my wife. Sometimes our dates aren't so glamorous. We just go to a charade or the like. But other times we really get quality time together. And Tuesday nights I'm off from yeshiva, and I have time just to spend with my wife. Thursday nights I get back earlier because yeshiva has programming for Mishmar. I have time there as well. So in essence, my schedule has various different important items I'm trying to address all at the same time. My own learning, my teaching, my davening, my kid time, and my marriage time, as well as then my work time. And between all of those, I try to have a mix, this blend, which enables all of them.
So wow, that sounds like a really intense schedule. You know, this type of schedule that one might associate with burnout, but it sounds from you like you're really so passionate and so happy with all things that you do that I'm not a mental health expert, but that doesn't sound like a recipe for burnout when every part of your schedule is filled with meaning and stuff that gives you joy. So transitioning to the last question, because we're short on time, it's quite a common scenario where a young person will feel a passion for learning Torah and teaching Torah, but the big elephant in the room is finances. Am I going to be able to make it financially? So given your experiences, what would your advice be to someone in that part of their life?
It is a super important question. I'll try to do it justice in the short amount of time we have left. 2 quick points. Number 1 is your eyes should be open. There's no reason that you have to say, I'm not going to think about the next steps. At every stage in my life, including the current one, I had my eyes open, assessing the reality on the ground. What were the needs? What was the best way, strategizing to advance forward? I don't think you can plan 20 years down the line, no matter who you are. But you can plan the next couple of months, the expected needs of the upcoming year, and you can try to, in a savvy fashion, address that which needs to be done. Seeking, okay, so do I need a little bit more income, or do I need a lot more income? What are the best means for me to stay hireable if I'm in the world of Clay Kodesh, but I might need to pivot to the other direction? So I think it's important to always have your eyes open. The second point that I would make is that you have to be aligned with the reality that you're not going to live a luxurious lifestyle if you're in the world of chinuch. That's not the expectation. If it is, either your wife's or your own, then you should not consider that career. However, I would urge you, no matter what, to at least strongly consider the career and decide whether that's something that the two of you can align yourselves on. Because right now, we need good people in chinuch. I think we've done too much of a successful job at scaring people away by talking about problems in finance that people now are like, I don't want it, it's too much, it's too hard for me. I think that's a big problem. We need people who are good and dedicated, who are interested in imparting Torah to the next generation, and they have to try. And you should be considering this, even if ultimately it's not for you, you're not ready to sign up for it. But I do think that it's doable, and you shouldn't be afraid by saying it's impossible. It is impossible to love luxury and then live a life of chinuch. But if you can just settle with a basic life, where the things that are most important are the things which are not material items, but rather the spiritual items in your life, then I think that you can succeed, and you shouldn't be afraid to try, even for a period of time. As long as your eyes are open, you can always pivot if it's not working out, but hopefully it will work out with the right dedication and with the right siyata d'shmaya.
That is a beautiful closing message. Rav Chezkie, thank you so much for all of your insights today. There's so much more that we still haven't discussed. How you manage to be an executive in such short hours. What are your strategies? How do you do that? There's so much more that we have to talk about. We're going to have to do a part 2, Bezrat Hashem, down the line, but thank you so much for taking the time today. This was excellent.
My pleasure. Thank you so much again, Yaakov.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Shark Tank. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a 5-star review and make sure that you are subscribed so that you don't miss future episodes. As always, thank you to our production team, Yoni Schwartz, Yitzchak Spinman, and Yossi Book. Until next time, keep on steiging, Chevra.